My name is J.R. Richardson. I'm with the Bellevue University, and Bellevue University is supporting the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation, and we are doing a project called Share Your Story. I'm here at the Military Veterans Services Center on Bellevue University campus. Today is the 9th of October, and we are in Bellevue, Nebraska, and we are with a veteran, John Tresemer, and John is here to share his story and his experience in the military. John, if you can introduce yourself, where you were born, and a little bit about your family.
Hi, my name is John Tresemer. I was born in Osage, Iowa. I grew up on a farm 5 miles south of Osage. Went to Osage, or graduated from Osage High School in 1963. I went to college, 2 years at Mason City Junior College and 2 years at what was the State College of Iowa, which is now the University of Northern Iowa, graduating in 1967. Upon graduation, I took a job as a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher in Mason City, Iowa. And the first year that I taught, I learned how to fly, and after that I just kind of wanted to get into the flying business. So in 1970 I came in the Air Force, went to officers training school in San Antonio, Texas. Upon receiving my commission, I went to Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, Georgia, and flew the T-37 and the T-38, graduating in November of 1971. Upon completion of that, I did several survival schools, and then I went to Hurlburt Air Force Base and checked out in the O-2A aircraft, and then went to Vietnam into the 21st TAS as a forward air controller flying the O-2, and did primarily putting in airstrikes from ground troops marking their positions on the ground with smoke, and others that I just surveyed and used binoculars to find targets, and I would mark them and call in fighters, and hopefully we would destroy the targets. Probably the most rewarding or whatever I did over there was the April offensive of 1972, the Anlock offensive. Flew that quite a bit. Probably one of the most memorable days, although it was not a fun day at all, was the May 11th of 1972. We lost 4 pilots over Anlock on that one day. 2 of them were from my squadron, if you will, flying the O-2. Another one that was lost that day was a pilot in an A-37, and we also lost an Army helicopter pilot that day. And it's just one of those days that you would like to forget, but you just can't. Probably in addition to that, I did work a search and rescue mission one time with A-1Es and the 130 that we successfully rescued a downed helicopter pilot, and for that action I received the Distinguished Flying Cross. Met a lot of good friends there that I'm still friends with. We had, out of that group, probably for 15 or 16 years, we had an annual reunion that we would get together at a fellow's house, and it was just going over old times and old memories, and some of them good, some of them bad, but it was just always a joy to get together with these people. Unfortunately, about a year ago, we had to stop doing it, and I also belong to a large national FAC organization, and I think our last formal reunion with that is going to be in 2024, the fall of 2024, and hopefully I'll get to see some other people that I haven't seen in a long time.
Okay. When was the last time you flew in a O2?
Well, it would have been in January of 1973.
Have you ever gotten a interest in going out and flying one again?
I had the opportunity one time at Oshkosh Air Show. There was one up there that was on static display, and I visited with the gentleman, and he was kind and let me go up with him for a short flight, which was very enjoyable.
Very neat. When you, let's talk a little bit about when you went into the service. Were there other family members, your dad, brothers that also served?
No,
previously?
I was the first one that served. My dad worked in a arms factory during World War II, and so he did not do World War II, but he produced materials for World War II.
And did he do that in Iowa?
That was in Iowa.
Middleton, Iowa?
No, it was Charles City, Iowa.
Charles City. It's interesting how many different cities are involved with the war effort, and you just go back later on.
It was the Oliver tractor plant that was given the opportunity to build some of this equipment, and he did that.
Very interesting. When you told your folks that you were looking, they already knew you were interested in flying.
Yes.
When you told them you were making that big leap and there's this war going on, what were their thoughts there?
They thought I was doing a very noble thing.
Okay. How about when you came back home from Vietnam? I know that there's stories out there on how people were received. I think there's a difference, and this is just going by what I've been learning, seems to be a difference that many of the people assigned to the military that stayed in the military were kind of shielded from some of that because their communities were a lot more
Yes,
pro-service.
I found that too. Being in, active military and sharing similar experiences with the people, I don't think I really felt that like others may have.
And then when you stayed in your next assignment, what was your first assignment coming home from Vietnam?
It was Grand Forks Air Force Base as a tanker pilot.
And can you talk a little bit about the training involved there? Because you probably had a whole new aircraft there.
Yes, I did about 3 months of training at Castle Air Force Base in Merced, California.
And how did you like that, flying the big heavies versus?
It was a challenge from coming from a small airplane to a big airplane, but
And then the Grand Forks, you spent quite a bit of time there.
yep, 7 winters.
Yeah, 7 winters. Okay. What was the best part of Grand Forks?
The community really appreciated the base being there. The University of North Dakota was there. There was a lot of just good activities and good people.
And I should have asked earlier, but which aircraft were you flying?
The KC-135.
Okay, so it was fairly new still
Yes.
at that stage of the
Yes.
game. It's a beautiful platform. And then after Grand Forks, what was next?
I came to Offutt Air Force Base to fly the SAC Airborne Command Post for the 2nd Air Command and Squadron,
And
2nd AX.
was that the E4?
No, that was the EC 135.
And anything significant on that assignment going on in the world that you guys had to deal with? I know SAC was kind of the premier part of the Air Force.
Not really, just the keeping the airplane up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that was kind of a neat and fun challenge to be able to do that.
And it did that for years and years and years.
It did
Until I think George Bush
yeah
put an end to it as far as the 24/7.
yeah.
And then what was your assignment after that?
From there, I went to Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska as part of the Cobra Ball program, and spent a year out at a remote base at the next to the last island of the Aleutian chain with the Cobra Ball program, which was a reconnaissance program.
Cobra Ball. And being out in the Aleutians, that's pretty close to the Big Bear too.
Yeah, we were not too far away from Russia.
We interviewed an individual whose flight on the way to Vietnam with 240 soldiers aboard was forced landed. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
He actually lives here in Omaha, and I just couldn't believe it. It's amazing that you just weren't taught that.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that was a very, very interesting program. It really was. Very rewarding.
And then after Alaska, you ended up coming back to
I came back to Offutt in the another RC program, the Rivet Joint program, and ended up in that until I retired in 1993.
And with all the flying time, let's start with the real easy question. What was the funnest aircraft, the aircraft that you enjoyed the most flying?
Probably the O2 in Vietnam.
And why?
I don't know, just the challenge, I guess, of the day-to-day being in the harm's way, I guess.
Yeah. To me, I think that would be pretty interesting because you were flying so low. You were like right there.
Yeah, we were a target.
When I saw the restored one that we were talking about earlier, it had quite a few bullet holes, and it seemed like it was all from the right side of the aircraft up through what would be a co-pilot, but that was a clear door, and up to the pilot. You were close enough they probably could see you as a target. So. Did you ever have any civilian flying after you got out of the service?
Yes, I did. After I retired, I flew for Midway Airlines until they went bankrupt. And then I had the good fortune of getting a job flying a twin-engine turboprop for the Army Corps of Engineers. And I did that for 7 years. And then they downsized from 3 full-time pilots to 2. I was the most junior guy and got let go, and had a couple boys in college at the time, so I dusted off my CDL and I jumped in a truck for 2 years. And then just out of the blue, a job came up at Offutt Air Force Base as a academic and simulator instructor in the RC-135, and I did that for the next 15 years, retiring in 2015.
Wow. Well, one of my doctors, I gotta say this, flew in the simulator as we were getting ready to recruit him. And it was very interesting because I sat in there with him in the simulator. And I think it was almost 20 feet of movement each way.
Oh, it was very very realistic.
Yeah, because we walked out on the catwalk to get in, and then it drops and backs out.
Yeah.
That was interesting, but I think the interesting thing is how much you appreciate your experience, because the simulator, one of the key things we did was refuel underneath the tanker.
Yes.
And the instructor pilot that was with us, now Dr. Steincross was already a doctor, already a pilot, a private pilot, and he would go up to try to hook onto the fueling, and it was just all over the place. And I think he said it was 1 degree on the yoke was like 20 feet of movement.
Yeah, that was the hardest thing when you had a brand new student, was to teach them to get rid of the ring rock. Once you got rid of the wing rock, then the rest of the forward and the aft and the up and down was pretty easy. But it took a while to get.
Well,
they would just over control.
Yeah,
so.
And he never could get it. And I remember the instructor pilot, one-handed, every time just went zip.
Yes.
Zip.
Yes.
It's very intriguing how much skill is involved, the high hand-eye coordination in that. So you got a good commercial experience behind you as well.
Yes.
Doing something you love.
Yes.
So with your full experience in the Department of Defense and flying, any regrets at all?
None.
So what was, in all of that flying, whether it was while you were in the war, after the war, what was your best day?
Golly. I'd say probably my best day was when I worked that search and rescue mission in Vietnam. Probably found that to be the most rewarding of anything I did.
Are you familiar with the local pilots, O2 pilots?
There's some of us around that I knew.
John Wright, are you familiar?
Well, I know of him. I don't know him, but
he had a very similar experience, I guess, because you guys being out there in the field, you're going to be probably the nearest, closest support when somebody does go down. At least to keep, the initial to keep the person in kind of a safe position as best as you can from the air. But I could see what that would give you a lot of satisfaction.
It did.
So, in that same retrospect, the worst day.
May 11th, 1972, when we lost those 4 guys over Anlock.
And were they, you said 2 of them were in your unit.
Yes.
Were they O2
They
drivers?
were O2 drivers. The Lieutenant Mike Blassie in the A-37. And then there was an Army captain in a helicopter.
So, when you look at all your experience, your education, did you go back to school and get additional graduate degrees?
I got a master's degree while I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
A master in aeronautical science from Emory-Riddle University.
Any of your children, did they go into the service?
No, they did not.
Dad's footsteps?
No, they didn't.
Well, let's talk about your best girl. Where did you guys meet along the way?
In my hometown of Osage, Iowa. She was teaching school there.
So she went all over the world with you.
Well, we didn't do any stateside bases other than Grand Forks and Offutt. So we didn't travel. The family. My boys started school in the Papillion school system, and both of them graduated from Papillion, and so they didn't move. We were kind of atypical Air Force as far as moving every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, well, there are those niches, especially if you start getting into instructor pilot.
Yeah, and you get into funny airplanes. Sometimes it's hard to get out of them. So,
any enjoyable travel overseas?
Oh yes, with the RC, we would go to England and Greece and Japan and Alaska, and
Now, were some of those with your wife? Did you guys ever take advantage of any of the hops?
One time when I was up in Alaska, I was on the kind of a remote assignment there. They came up and visited the summer that I was there.
And you were able to take a space aid then?
Well, they flew up commercial.
Oh, okay.
I was up there already. So.
Gotcha. What about now? I mean, you guys are still young enough to get around.
Yeah, we haven't used space aid very much.
Yeah.
Just haven't.
We had a commander here that would fly the RCs over to Hawaii.
Yeah.
So there was a routine flight always going over to Hickam or whatever.
Yeah.
I know that quite a few of our folks that worked here local were able to do it.
Yeah, it's a good program.
Yeah, I didn't get into any of them yet, but my bride wants to do it.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to maybe getting over to Rome.
Yeah.
Which would be my place of choice. Of all your travel, was there any place that sticks out the most where all the different locations you went?
Probably Mildenhall Air Force Base in England and Hellenikon Air Force Base in Greece.
Okay. All right. Anything in specific about Mildenhall?
Oh, just the English countryside and close to Cambridge, which was had the university there and
Queen's College.
Queen's College and some of that was always interesting. And then Hellenikon was right in Athens and just all the old historical things of Athens.
Right. Very good. So there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, John, and this question isn't to create any angst or be political in nature, but just like during Vietnam, which you were able to get past that, but just like during Vietnam, there was a lot of turmoil. And right now we have a lot of turmoil.
Yes.
And right now the recruiting units are not making their goals, and they're not even coming close. So something's got to give. And so now on the news I've heard, and I was a recruiter for 136 years.
Yeah.
So I kind of keep in touch on what they're doing. But what would you tell that young person right now that is really caught between what's going on in the world and the politics that have affected the military versus still stepping up to the plate and serving? What advice would you give them? Because you were right there. You went in at a time that everything was coming loose because Vietnam had already wore people thin.
Well, I would just say go back and study history and see how we have evolved and how we've resolved a lot of that. I just think a lot of people don't look at history as much as they should.
And so you would recommend that they still join?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So with your civilian, most people, yours is kind of obvious because your flying skills, but what else did your military experience as a leader, lieutenant colonel, as a senior leader in the military, what kind of skill sets did you bring into your civilian organizations, whether it was as a job or maybe it was in some of the organizations that you belong to?
Well, I think it was just the being trained to get along with other people and how to, ask people to do, or being able to do, ask them to do what you would do. Don't ask them to do something you wouldn't do yourself.
Yeah. And that's kind of an old philosophy that I was right behind you on and received that don't expect somebody to do something you're not able and capable and willing to do.
That's right.
So, and that came in handy many times with me.
I'm sure.
Because it's just recruiting's long and tiresome. And it's just something that you have to kind of build that rapport with your people because they end up doing it for you, not so much for the job. It's that respect they have for that leader. So,
that's true.
Well, we're getting close. I don't want to cut our time shy. We got about 6.5 minutes. Tell me, Now that you're retired, what's the best part of retirement?
Well, in today's medical costs, the medical things that I'm eligible for are just incredible. I mean, you can't put a dollar sign on that stuff. They're taking care of us medically. They really are, for being a retired individual.
Now you're when you're, for the listeners, when you're talking about medical, are you being seen at the VA hospital? The VA
I go to a independent doctor, but I also have rights at the VA, and I get some things done at the VA, and I get some things done with a private. So it's kind of a mix.
Do you ever get on the base with the Air Force yet?
Well, oh yeah, I get most of my medications from the base.
Okay, so there's a big plus there.
Yes, there is. Like I said, I'm very fortunate to not only have a monthly pension, but the health care that I've been provided. You just can't put a dollar sign on that.
Now you mentioned earlier that with your flying that you still keep in touch with your group.
Yes.
And then there's the one group that this is going to be their last reunion.
Yes.
What is the reason for that? Is that just
I think
age?
it's just age. Just people are getting too old to do a lot of that stuff anymore.
Right. And the traveling gets tough.
Traveling, yes.
Maybe there's a shift in technology. The one advantage you have at your age.
The Zoom, you can Zoom.
I was about to say, one advantage you have at your age.
And there
is.
There's a group of former 38th Reconnaissance Squadron pilots and NAVs that every Thursday at 4 o'clock Central Time we Zoom, and sometimes it might only be 3 or 4 of us, and sometimes it could be 10. It just kind of depends. And that's a very fun thing to be able to do.
What was your call sign? That's one of the things that I always forget to ask, and it's something that's really intriguing to me.
Well, the call sign that I had in Vietnam, I had 2 of them, Rod 1-2 and Rod 1-4.
Well, that just doesn't sound very exciting.
No, but it...
How did you get that? Was that just something they assigned to you?
Yeah,
then?
it was assigned.
So no stories like Maverick, or Rocket Man, and
No, nothing like that.
All right. Do you ever use your call signs now? I mean, is there any?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add to your story? Anything? Here's another question. Your parachute man. Is there a person out there that was very influential on your career early on, maybe in your training? I call it the parachute man because of one of the POWs. His parachute packer.
Yeah.
Literally showed him some techniques that ended up saving his life. And so he says everybody's got one out there, somebody that was very influential.
I would say it was probably my 135 when I went through instructor training for the 135. My instructor was a gentleman by the name of, at the time he was Major Stan Brubaker, and he ended up retiring as an 06, but Stan probably had as much influence on me as anybody in the Air Force.
And was he, how long in the tooth was he? Because I know some of those instructors are pretty young too.
Oh, I don't know, he's maybe 5 or 6 years older than I am.
Yeah, so he would have been quite young himself
to
have that kind of an impact.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that always surprised me.
Yeah.
Is I think back on the people that really had influence on me, and they seemed like men.
Yeah.
And yet they were only a couple years older than me.
Yeah, that's true.
But they just, when they're a sergeant, and all of a sudden you establish or put their experience with their age.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we're going to be good to go here. We got just a minute left, so the Library of Congress is pretty strict on that for entry in it. What's your last parting statement for those that maybe those that you don't get to see as often that might go in there and Google your name and come up with this?
Well, I thank them and you for the opportunity to be able to do this. And if some young person comes along sometime and pulls me up, and hopefully it can influence them, or if it's someone that I knew long time ago, can go and pull my name up and see this.
That's one of the neatest things about the park, is because of the technology. Being the last one of the 50 states, we have the advantage of including technologies that were not available
earlier. Yeah.
And so what's really neat is people actually can Google you and it'll come up through the park, and they can actually leave you a message.
Yes.
They can actually, and you can do the same for them, for people that you've served with. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your service. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because it's absolutely an honor for me. I have a son that spent 12 years in the Air Force, and his 12 years, he was downsized, his 12 years with 3 deployments just completely swallows anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel when I'm with those that have done so much. And all of our pilots, all of our maintainers, all of them are out there doing it every day, and we appreciate that.
Yes.
And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, JR.
You're very welcome, sir.
And hopefully